Hi, I'm Sudhir Arni from Site Machine. We are a manufacturing data platform that unlocks use of manufacturing data at scale. At Site Machine, I lead relationships with a number of our manufacturing and technology partners and help them in their journey to use manufacturing data. Today, at the Food Manufacturing Summit, I have the privilege of leading a discussion of how manufacturers are using data to enable change in their organizations. I hope you enjoy this discussion and learn a lot from the perspectives from these executives. Josh, Sarvi, it's great to be here discussing all things data, all things manufacturing, everything food with you both. I'm Sudhir Arni. I'm with Site Machine. I work with a lot of our manufacturing partners in helping them use data in their shop floor, in their production environments. Maybe we start with a quick round of introduction background, Josh, with you, and then with Sarvi.
Sure.
And then we get started with our discussion.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, good morning. My name's Josh Chou. I'm the Chief Supply Chain Officer at McCormick Foods, McCormick, I guess, overall incorporated. I spent about 2.5 years there. I've been in operations for a little over 30 years, for the last 14 years at food between McCormick and General Mills.
Thank you, Josh. I'm Sarvi Bajwa. I'm with Danone North America. I'm mostly well known for the Dan and yogurt lines of product. Being with Danone just over 18 months. Before that, I was with Coca-Cola. And then prior to that, I spent many years with Procter & Gamble in many various operational roles in manufacturing, distribution, warehousing, and logistics.
Thank you, Josh, Sarvi. Thank you for sharing your backgrounds. Let's start the discussion from the highest levels of digital transformations, usage of data in manufacturing as the first topic. Would be great to know, Josh, first from you and from you, Sarvi, in your organizations at McCormick and Danone. What are you trying to do right now from a vision standpoint for manufacturing transformation with data? Where do you see that going, and what are the efforts that you've started?
Thanks. Yeah. I think that from the simplest level, our goal would be is that you've got transparency of information and insights from the shop floor to the top of the house. And the ideal situation is on any given moment, any given day, people would have the exact same level of both insight as to what's happening as well as access to information on how to solve problems or identify opportunities going forward. So noting that that's our ideal state, the reality is we've got, I think like many other companies that are here in the conference this week, we've got a combination of legacy sites, acquisitions that run off a number of different platforms. And so what we're trying to do right now is figure out how to extract information and insight from any given platform, raise it up into some version of a cloud to be able to access that and then leverage it holistically. In some places where we've launched connected workforce platforms that enable a greater degree of connectivity, and so we maybe have that in half of our facilities now and work on a plan to roll that out. But then knitting it together amongst the various aspects of there's operational data, there's planning data, there's maintenance data, there's inventory data. Again, the key for us is that we've got to get it up above to be able to connect it because we don't have the connectivity between those various systems right now.
Interesting. Sarvi, how about you?
Yeah, and I was thinking about after listening to some of the speakers this morning, including yourself, there. My thoughts went to, okay, we all want AI. We all want some sort of automation, digitization of our shop floor. But I think the question like I asked was where we get started. I think that's where our company gets tripped up a lot, is how do you get started, and because the folks who are at the chair like myself or of my global leader are not experts in AI, not experts in digitization. So hard for us for me, speaking for myself, hard to conjure a vision that says, here's where we want to be. However, what we have done in our company in Danone is we have every year we declared 3 areas that we call our breakthrough areas, versus improve versus maintain. And the breakthrough areas are areas where we haven't done something in that arena before, or we don't know how to do it. We're not successful at it. And this year, as a supply chain, we have put forth our AI digitization automation as one big chunk as a breakthrough area for 2025. And so part of us doing it means sponsorship from our global supply chain officer, and so he's, as a matter of fact, he's the one pushing it. So now part of our journey is going to be educating myself, my leadership team, because as you mentioned, Josh, our company has 12 plants in the U.S. Probably about 70% of them came from legacy organizations, previously owned plants, then some big acquisition in 2018 with Whiteway Foods, and then subsequently 3 other acquisitions. So every one of them has their own legacy systems that don't talk to each other. Even on the shop floor, we have a different warehouse management system, warehouse production system that don't necessarily speak to each other. And then we got some automation with cobots going on. So I think what we really, my ideal situation would be that we have a clear strategy in 2025 of what are we going to do in this landscape.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing, both of you. We also, as a partner to a number of manufacturers, do see that as a critical first decision point. Where do you start? How do you start? The underlying challenge with the data and the systems, Josh, as you mentioned, with many factories being different, acquired plants, the complexities are many. Where do you start? How do you start is definitely a big decision. I think that'll be a good point to maybe speak about and get perspective from both of you. Maybe Sarvi first from you and then from you, Josh, is any efforts that you've started at any of the plants to use the data and go on this AI journey or digitization journey. How did you make the first decision for any pilot that you started or any effort that you already are underway with? What went into that decision?
Yeah, sure thing. For us, getting started was, as I think we discussed in one of our sessions this morning, getting started means having a pilot. It's very overwhelming to jump into it with both hands and feed every one of our 12 plants, and the cost itself is also can be not pragmatic. So we have picked a pilot plant who will be we call it digital lighthouse. We have one in Europe, and then we have one in North America, and we picked that plan based on a few factors. Number one is the maturity of the site. If the site's in some sort of big challenge, this is not something we want them to do or own, but the site has to be mature with the results, with their culture, as well as their capability. The second criteria was the site has its fundamental metrics in good shape. Even though you could argue that you want to go to a site that's not doing well, help bring it up. But again, the concern there is sponsorship from the leadership team. So a site that's matured, its own fundamental metrics is the right one to be our digital lighthouse. So we've already started our work in using cobots for pick and placing of our cups, right, where yogurt goes in, pick and placing cardboard, that cases go in. I mean, a product goes into cases. And the general objective here is to learn by doing. So the next 12 months, we're going to learn a lot from the site. And then as we learn more by doing, just like IWS does, which we have in our company, learn, do, teach, they're going to learn, they're going to do it, they're going to teach the rest of us on how to do it.
Very interesting. How about you, Josh?
Boy, I wish I had a more holistic view about how we've done it, but I think the reality is we think about digitalization automation in the supply chain space in kind of 3 buckets, right? There's the automation of physical tasks, there's the automation or the connectivity of information and insights, and then there's the automation of decision making, which is more the machine learning and AI. So that's rightly or wrongly, that's kind of how we define that. I think the automation of physical tasks is one where we've largely identified those areas that frankly are undesirable physical tasks, i.e. it's not going to be an area where the workforce is going to have any, frankly, concerns at all. So we have platforms where we have to, people are throwing 25-pound bags all day long of dust, et cetera. Nobody really complains about those. Moving of cases for case packing or cobots, et cetera, tend to be low impact areas. So our physical automation spaces is, I would say, relatively well defined, and we kind of have a journey where, similar to what you've talked about, we have a new area to explore. It's usually every 2 to 3 years, and so you'll launch it in a given space, we'll flow it through the organization to the extent the standardization makes sense, and then we move on to the next part of the investment, and that's all sort of cost justified. On the connected workforce piece, that's a place that we piloted in a number of different areas. We've landed on a kind of provider that we think that makes sense, and now we're in sort of our accelerated application. Transparently, the biggest challenge that we have is that we've got some pretty significant gaps in the core kind of OT or even hardware infrastructure. I mean, the very basics of, can you get Wi-Fi access across the site, or how reliable is the internet signal coming in? And so what we found is that some of those very basic investments have been needed to even enable this aspect of connected workforce. As you kind of see people, if you think, boy, I want to be able to walk around with an iPad everywhere and troubleshoot and take pictures. That can work really well. We have places that it's, we have, I think, as you were describing, like, well, I guess we did that similar lighthouse process where you had a relatively stable plant that was doing it, and it works well. But then as we go to some other sites, you realize they'll go 20 feet beyond, where you thought, and all of a sudden this great idea of connectivity is falling apart. And so we do have an element over the next 2 years that we're going to have to make some core infrastructure investments to help us get there as well. And then I think for the automation and decision making, there's aspects of that that'll take place in our manufacturing footprint. But frankly, if we can have a greater degree of connected workforce that has and can get insights and data, we're much more comfortable with that being, the decision making and the choices will still be in the hands of, likely a lot more in the hands of our operators. We'll be applying more of that decision space outside in our procurement space.
Yeah, Josh, if I can add to your first point about shop floor automation, the sort of tasks that people don't look forward to and hope they don't get, that's where we have our highest turnover also. And so the automation is 5 years ago, automation would be strictly a financial ROI, and in today's world, the primary reason is to take away the tasks that people don't want to do,
right.
And we're less reliant on those tasks with people and automate them. Then you also get better retention of workforce.
Absolutely.
It's very, very interesting topics that both of you touched on. We are beginning to see in food industry, especially when we are partnering with our manufacturing partners, the idea of basic infrastructure is something to be thought about for sure. We have started seeing that. We started at some plants with some of our customers, and we realized, what? Bandwidth of the wireless network seems like it's not enough because it wasn't upgraded for a while. Those new challenges is something that we are seeing. It was different from some other industries, frankly. The food industry seems like there is an infrastructure thing to be thought about. So that was very interesting what you said. I think this idea of talent turnover, I think, is critical from two standpoints. I'd love to get perspectives from both of you, maybe just starting with you and Survey with you after that is, talent turnover is something that happens for sure, and it's a significant challenge that's happening in manufacturing in general. It'll be good to get perspective on that, how you guys are tackling that. And the second thing would also be, when you're introducing technology to the existing talent, what's been the response in terms of adopting this new way of working? Are you seeing challenges in that? That'll be really good to get perspectives on as well.
All right, that's going to be a lot to remember. So. Actually, I might start with the second.
Sure, yeah.
I had a specific thing that I was thinking about. So, again, the premise that we've had that obviously as different vendors come in, they remind you is that it's not necessarily universal, but almost all age groups of our employees have a smartphone, right? And so they have some extent, everywhere around the globe. And so they have some familiarity with utilizing apps, taking pictures, and getting information and insights. And what we realized was that, and then when they came into our shop floor, they had to go back to writing things on a piece of paper, or actually that conversion into using things like Excel was actually harder because it had no familiarity with what they were doing locally. And so we found that as we've applied, especially in this connected workforce space, tools and methodologies is actually more similar to what they would have been using at home, made it easier. And I had an example in one of our plants in the UK where an operator was talking about the fact, so even going beyond the technology, about the fact that he did, as a shift pass off, he might remember to tell you, hey, by the way, check bin number 72 because we had a small problem with it. And then maybe he'll have written it down. But now through the capability he has, he can send out in a just as easy as anything else a sort of blast message to all the possible people that might be interfacing with that piece of equipment, both what he observed, pictures, and what he's done to troubleshoot. And so that they so at a minimum for him, I've at least passed on the message. And he found that to be a highly empowering opportunity. And again, to be clear, this was not a young millennial, person in our organization. This was somebody who was really appreciating the opportunity, how this particular tool helped him kind of move along on the journey. Now, it's not universal, but I would say we've been really surprised by having a simplistic interface is enabling that much more quickly. Now, there's other platforms, ERP platforms that don't have that same degree of simplicity that actually are much more challenging, right? So that as we also have to kind of incorporate that into people's work, that's definitely much more of a struggle. So I think to the extent that our technology interface looks much more like what people use outside of work, the adoption's been relatively quick.
It's a really, really good point.
Yeah, so I think, for me, look, when I joined the company in early 23, as we ended the year, or as we were getting close to ending the year, we looked back and we had hired 600 new employees in 2023 on a base of 3,500 employees in our plants. That's a little bit less than a fifth of the workforce that was turned over. And, our HR folks, as well as my strategy leader, did some rough calculations on amount of time that's spent training and the amount of overtime is spent to cover that, and came up with a staggering $11 million a year in loss. And so we had to do something. And so we took some action. We looked at our wages. We looked at our work environment. We had to change some leadership in plants because, folks were not working well with the current leadership or existing leadership. And we found that in 24, we knocked that down to less than half. But 300 is still a large number of turnover in any given year. So, as we go into 2025, we have, again, back to the pilot program, we have made one of the sites who had the highest turnover and made them the pilot for what can you do, get in the minds of the folks who are coming in, the ones who leave, ones who stay, and find out what really makes them stay, what really makes them, wanting to leave. This is a very high-touch generation of workforce that comes in, and so that's a big part of their retention. And this site's done some phenomenal work in the last 4 months. And for the first time in the 18 months I've been here, they have filled all their open roles and don't have a revolving door of filling some and then again filling some and then filling again some. So, but still a huge challenge for us is how do you stabilize the workforce, stabilize the leadership, because that's the foundation of all the work that, including digitization, that needs to happen.
Mm. One of the things that it reminded me of as we think through this, and my guess is that a lot of people will say, well, of course you do that. It was not something we had been doing effectively, but we piloted last year a frontline leader training program in one of our facilities, like a 6-week program broken up into a couple different chunks, because what we were finding was that the reason people were often leaving, right, is people always say that, you leave your manager, you don't leave the company. And so, and we had a lot of people that were maybe really good at their job that then we promoted to being a leader, and then we didn't really give them any capability for it. And so this frontline leader program, actually we piloted it 2 years ago, deployed more broadly last year, and then next year is kind of like the full deployment where we get everybody. We're finding it gives us a twofold benefit. One is that the people that are getting managed are seeing a lot more consistency, because fairness is one of the key things why people are leaving. And again, you're never going to have an environment where every individual feels like they're totally treated fairly, but at least having standard processes and a mindset by people is helping us. And the second thing is it's also creating some upward mobility in the organization, because they see not only do I potentially have the chance to move up in the organization, but there'll be training and capability built, because we were seeing probably as much turnover in that frontline leadership group as we were seeing in our core group, because they'd be at times thrown into a role, unprepared, put in a very challenging environment, and not necessarily having the tools they wanted to see. So that choice of investment for us, I think, has probably had some of the biggest dividends, paid the biggest dividends for us in terms of retention. Now, it's not perfect, and you're going to have, right, I'm sure it's the same for you. It's a site-by-site dynamic. There's some places where we see relatively little turnover, and sometimes it's the nature of the work or the schedule, or sometimes it's the economic environment of the area. But we have found that good leadership from the top of the house down to that frontline leadership has made a significant difference.
Yeah. Now, I have one more thing too, Josh. I think continuing your thought process there, having solid leadership, enjoying working for your leader is a big part of it. And the other message I heard this morning is use the digital tools to empower the teams. And I thought about it from a little different perspective. I think anybody who worked in P&G manufacturing knows IWS, Integrated Work Systems. We purchased the license and Danone from P&G. And one of the manufacturing org design entails a line true for every line, a maintenance leader, a process engineer, and a line leader. And then you empower them to deliver the results, continuous improvement, and so on. When people are more engaged in the outcome of their work and feel the satisfaction of making a difference, finding and fixing defects every day, we found that job satisfaction is what also keeps them around.
Very interesting. These are some of the ideas that we're also seeing a lot with our manufacturing partners. Introducing technology to the shop floor, Josh, something you said resonated very well. Give them something which is similar to what they use in their everyday life, and that's what maybe is the best way to adopt it. We are beginning to see giving good technology, giving them access to what's happening in real time. Did I have a good day or not? It's a significant morale booster, something that can definitely help. Let's touch on one more topic outside of the idea of the workforce right now. One thing I think a lot of our viewers will be very interested in knowing is, when you look at McCormick and at Danone, from a strategic business priority, where are you seeing the importance of digitization in supply chain and manufacturing as compared to other business functions?
Yeah, I think, look, for us, if I look at, what's most critical in our plants, it's safety and quality. It's the most critical. And I would say in terms of automation of data and making decisions and keeping us on track, it's quality. Food safety is very critical to our customers, quality and food safety. And so what we're finding is that our systems in quality, based on the earlier point I made that we have a number of ERP systems through legacy as well as acquisitions, we find that the quality systems don't connect with each other. So for me, if I was to put a pen in something that's the most critical to the organization, I would say it's how do we use this information, data, network, and strategy to solidify our quality systems, quality processes, and give the line trio on each line the tools to fully understand what's going on with their quality. So they, like you said, did I win today or did I lose today? When it comes to quality, and then have them drive that.
It's as you're talking about it, because I was trying to formulate, how the kind of top of the house looks at it. And honestly, for us, maybe in a similar theme, they're looking for what is going to ensure that we have operational executional excellence, and then either enabling growth or cost savings, but most of the time cost savings in this space around automation and digitalization. And so, honestly, I will, in that scope, it's like, well, then just make sure you're taking care of it. And I would agree, a lot of our investments early on, you're going to have the physical automation potentially driving cost savings, but the rest of it is really about how are you helping to enhance execution. And so as opposed to some of the other parts of our organization where we think that expanding our, digital footprint is going to drive, and marketing is going to drive material growth, and there's a high degree of engagement and involvement about it. Nobody really is going to be asking me about which MES system I'm using in our various plants and the standardized.
Yeah.
But they are going to be asking, hey, that incident we had last week, will this fix that? And if that's going to be so it really is about that kind of executional excellence that I think people are invested in. But and still in the end falls down to us to say, because the question is always going to be, well, can't you just do that anyway without spending the money? And so we've got to be able to make this case for, yes, I should expect that everybody does their job perfectly every single day with no slip-ups. But in reality that none of us do, how do we ensure that our the digital capability we bring on helps enhance that performance, helps us build up better than we were before at a reasonable cost?
Let's follow on that just a little bit, I think. Do you personally think is there opportunity to go beyond operational excellence with digitization and supply chain? Is that a growth and innovation engine for an organization?
I think there is, as you begin to span it across supply chain. I think honestly standalone in any single function, planning, procurement, distribution. It is going to be more about executional excellence. There's probably and cost savings. The ability to knit it together, though, is where I think we're going to see the greatest degree of value. I mean, one of the things that we've talked about, which is very aspirational for us. So I'm not going to no claims that this is ever going to stop for us. But if you get to the point where, you have customer or consumer data that's based on kind of direct structured data as well as unstructured data. Hey, it's Labor Day coming up, and we think the temperature is going to be 10 degrees above where they were. That can flow through your planning systems at the same time as you can send a signal through to the manufacturing floor, so you know which lines need to be optimized. If you have access to opportunities for labor arbitrage and moving folks between lines, you can say, hey, in 2 months this is going to be coming up. I need to adjust my skills, and then draw that all the way back into the procurement side to say we're going to increase inventory on vanilla flavoring because our ice cream clients are going to want more. I mean, that's where I think that knitting together of information can frankly drive more growth because we can take advantage of opportunities. The standalone pillars, I think, are harder. It's not that it's not possible, but I think it's that seamless knitting together that I would love to see happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and so they'll give you a couple of my thoughts, but again, I would like to also have you comment because you're coming from a company that helps companies like us. For us, obviously, with Josh, like you said, bringing them all together is not, it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
I think having said that, a lot of our tools that as we think about the future are towards CI. And every year we got to cut costs, at least cover inflation. If nothing else, we got to find better ways, more efficient ways to stay competitive. One of the areas that in the past I've dabbled in, and I'm going to start seeing how we can get more into it, is training. So about a decade or so ago, when Google had its Google glasses, I mean they were a fad for a while, and they sort of went away, and now we're again coming up with smart glasses. And so what happens with turnover? Part of the issue with turnover is not all the knowledge gets transferred. Part of the issue with turnover is that people who troubleshoot leave the organization, and the next person is scratching their head on, what do I do here? So my thinking is that we can use these smart glasses as training. So we bring the SME in. The SME goes in the shop floor, not in the classroom, goes in the shop floor. Let's just say changeover. They're doing a changeover based on some standard times and standard practices. All of that's being recorded by their smart glasses. These smart glasses are, I believe, are OSHA certified for being on the shop floor. And as you click and record that, then that can be used for training. And that can be used for training also when the new employee goes on the floor, because smart glasses can also have a window on the left or right with instructions. So you can go on the floor, you're doing a changeover, it'll tell you step 1, do this, you do it, step 2, do this. I think that's where I see it's a little bit of CI, but it's also capability.
Yeah.
That's where I see with our technology.
It's really interesting. We have technology partners with whom we have started exploring this idea. Any kind of augmented reality, be it with glasses or any other device, what potential it has on the shop floor. Because we see a lot of use cases with augmented reality in warehouses and picking and packing. That's quite a bit we see. There is opportunity, I think, on the shop floor. It's a really interesting area that you said, Sarvi, for sure. Josh, this big vision of connected end-to-end visibility view in a supply chain, truly the biggest idea I think that everyone is really focused on right now. We as a company are also seeing our customers are pulling us into it. We do manufacturing mostly, but with our technology partners, it's becoming a fairly large theme. How do you use technology for that supply, make, and sell all coming together for you to make enterprise-wide optimization happen? It's our technology, but it's just fascinating that no one's actually yet cracked it. That is a big vision for sure, definitely.
Aspiration.
Yeah.
Well, what I would say is that, again, we're not an advanced company in terms of our technology or platforms, but what we have begun to explore is how do we take the data from all, because we have lots of data, right? There's lots of information inside. All the systems don't connect, but it's out there. How do we take that elevated above our systems and then leverage people or tools and processes or technology to connect it when we can't do it ourselves? When it's, the analogy I tell folks is that this is my home analogy, so hopefully my wife doesn't see this, right? So, right? The aspiration is you walk into your house and you say hello to the house, the lights come on, the coffee maker starts, and the vacuum cleaner's and running, et cetera, right? And, and there's certainly platforms that connect that all. But we've sort of cobbled together over time that I've got a vacuum cleaner app, and I've got a garage door app, and I've got a light app, and I've got and while I'd love it if all those things talked together to each other, they didn't, because I chose not to spend as much money, and I did those different things. And my work life is pretty much like my whole life. Well, the integration point right now is me, which means that no matter where I am in the world, if it's too cold in the house, I get onto my phone and I can adjust it. And that's actually the opportunity we have in the same space at work, which is even if these systems don't all talk to each other, if I can get the information above it somehow, then I can utilize resources, or potentially I can knit it together in technology to get it until everything talks to each other kind of down below.
That's a good point, Josh. I like your analogy there. I'm going to use that when I get home, hopefully. But I think to get what you said, Josh, is spot on. I'll take that. I'll add to it that one of the areas for us in our company that comes to my mind with AI, for example, is network optimization. And today our network optimization is done by a person or two or three using Excel models. Obviously it depends on where your customers are, where your suppliers are. For us, being near dairy farms is extremely important for our yogurt business. And so how do you put all that together and say, here's the most optimal supply strategy, because multiple plants make the same SKUs. Which one should be making majority of it, maybe secondary, tertiary? All that work is done fairly effectively today by a team of folks led by one of their leaders. However, I would say, man, it would be great to have an AI in the background that keeps refreshing it at some frequency. So you go back because something's changed. The price of something went up, commodity went up, and all of a sudden now it may be more beneficial to move some production to West Coast versus Texas. I think that would be really cool. Like you said, Josh, aspirational for me is that we automate that part of it, so it gives us the most recent information on what's the most optimized network for us.
Really interesting thoughts. There's one more idea which is beginning to take shape. We are seeing across a lot of our food manufacturing customers. Every organization is operating as part of a fairly large value chain, not just a supply chain, but you got supplier plants, some of you have customer plants that it goes to. There's a fairly large value chain. Collaborating across the value chain with data sharing is a theme that we see quite a bit, especially focused on measurement of sustainable metrics. You can drive sustainability quite a bit in the value chain if you share data. Can you speak about if you're hearing about this? Is that a vision that your companies have thought about? Or what do you think about sharing data in the value chain?
Yeah, it's really a core aspect for us as we think through. The Scope 3 drive is huge for anybody, and for us, sometimes we're the first line going to the retailer, and sometimes we're the second or third because we supply a lot of other food manufacturers and drink manufacturers with input ingredients. And so, while we feel great about the work that we do downstream or upstream of manufacturing, how we get information is much more challenging, and that validation of it, especially as we go all the way back to the farm, and I'm sure you guys see this the same with dairy farms, as we think through that global aspect of it. And for us, there's two elements of it. There's the aggregation of data. How do we have a kind of concise view about chili peppers grown in India versus vanilla grown here, and what are the things that we want to be able to get? And the second one is the validation. It's how do you ensure that in a legacy of, the way that we used to validate data was, Sally Smith would go to the site and make sure that we're following all the appropriate practices. We still want to be able to do that, but you want to have some way of kind of doing, I think, an ongoing validation. That ongoing validation and then flowing it through the system, ideally all the way to the consumer, right? Because you'd love it if, through blockchain technology, somebody can click on a picture of item X and see a picture of the farmer, but also see the full list of the validation steps that we've taken. It's an opportunity for us to drive growth through the practices that we're already doing, right? We're already doing all the things that we think we should be in terms of protecting both the farmer and our consumers, but we don't bring that to life within the product line. And so what we are trying to figure out now is how we aggregate that data, but also how do we create that I'll call it verified traceability that can get accessed all the way to the consumer. And so we're exploring that with some different partners. Again, it comes down to some key foundational work from us as well, of course.
Yeah. So there, I was thinking about the question as Josh was sharing his experience. Honestly, I don't recall where we have successfully or productively used data across the value chain. I think, from a supplier to us, from us to our key customers, I'm sure there is some back office information that's shared, but in terms of strategic importance and functionality, I think that's a big opportunity for us. And as I go to some of our suppliers, cup supplier, for example, are they're frankly ahead of us. And some of these companies are owned by a family or a number of people who belong to a family, and so don't have to necessarily go to a board of directors to get approval for investments. So they just make the investment, and so they're far ahead of us. So my thinking is, why not leverage their capability to help us, because they want that too.
Yeah,
they feel they get a forecast from us, which many times I think they don't even look at, because they've got their own analytics that show what the forecast should be. Why not align with them, learn with them, and grow with them? That's the thought that was coming to my mind as I started thinking about the integration of systems.
Maybe one topic that we just potentially end the discussion with is really around, there's a lot of work, Josh, that you're doing, so we are doing, and your organizations are doing with digitization. As you see successes, as you see some challenges, how are you thinking about communication exercise within your organizations? Tell everyone how hard or challenging this journey might be and how to celebrate the wins, but at the same time, also really start explaining to people what's going into this effort. Are you thinking of a communication strategy, and what would you want to do to make sure the organization truly understands what your aspiration and visions are and how you're going about it?
Sorry? Go ahead. Oh, yeah. So I'll start with the fact that that broad strategic communication is a key across all aspects, whether it's digital journey or not. It's a growth opportunity for me in my role. It's a growth opportunity for us as an organization. So we've started doing a lot more, even just broad-based communication with the organization on a quarterly basis, on a monthly basis. We've got a great comms team who have set up a much more regular cadence by which I and my leaders get in front of the team. So, but that's 9 to 12 months, worth of work that we've been putting in. So it's not like we've got this long history. The key then is to think through, how do we create the environment where that goes from just talking at people to communicating the deeper aspects of it, I think, like you're talking about. And we have pockets of wins there. We have pockets of places where there's always an aspect of celebration, whether it's our monthly communications, our quarterly town halls, et cetera, where we can highlight that. And inevitably, it's probably 90% celebration and 10% careful about it. So then I would say what we're trying to do now is create communities of practice is probably the easiest way to highlight it, because we honestly don't really have an SG&A model where we can have large COEs that can kind of travel around the globe and implement. I mean, so we're really trying to say, hey, look, as we implement this connected workforce system in plant X, how do we create a community of practice so that as those get deployed site to site, they have single points of contact where they are able to make that connection. And then honestly, what we find is that, while in the post-COVID environment, everyone feels like, well, I can get a lot more done remotely. We're investing a little bit more in travel to say, go take a look at it. Mm-hmm. Because for the couple $1,000s for a U.S. trip, or even, $10,000 for an international trip, for that leader to spend a week in a site that's already implemented it, to hear from his or her peers, hey, this is what really went well, but here are the 15 things you need to remember, works far better than 5 weeks of calls where you may not always remember what they cover, et cetera. So that seeing it in situ is actually one of the key ways we've been able to both generate excitement from it, because you get to talk to multiple users, but also get more of the challenges associated with it, because a little bit more face time, a little bit more time and face-to-face tends to get some of those key nuggets out.
Thank you. Good point. So there, when you said celebration, immediately came to my mind was food trucks for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's what we use very, very well in our plants. And people get excited about that. It was one of our plants where they had an ice cream food truck, and boy, I tell you what, lines were long. But back to communication, our company, like many others, does an annual survey, employee survey, where it's not anonymous. You answer some questions, and then a company that's hired, cleans up the data and gives you back some of the top things that you're doing that are doing well, things that we need to improve. And the last two surveys that I have had an opportunity to look at the data, communication was the biggest strength, or one of the top three strengths, and communication was also one of the top three opportunity areas. Mm-hmm. And if you read the verbatims, you'll see some very strong verbatims, like, man, we talk to each other, we understand what we're doing today, and we are a well-knit family. Then you'll see another verbatim that says, I have no idea what the company is trying to do or what my leadership wants from this plant. And so that continues to be, I think, as we go to more digitization, as we've talked about, how do you get that information to employees? Like, I know my vision for manufacturing, but does the shop floor employee know it? The one who runs the filler know it? I think so, but I can't be very confident about that. I think the other thing is that if you think about IWS, and one of the things about IWS is every site needs to have a compelling business need. Is that compelling business need known? Is it on your iPad? Is it on your screens? Is it shared in town halls? Is it shared in meetings? We have a daily direction setting meeting in the morning for one level of the organization, shift change, and another level of the organization. But things are still written and posted, So I think it'd be great from a communication standpoint to have one platform that you can look at, go to a different tab, look at different things. You want to look at the company vision, company values. You can look at the manufacturing vision, supply chain vision. You can look at compelling business need for the plant. You can look at what strategies are in place and stay very well informed. I think one last comment here. The area that I don't think we do a good enough job is actually getting back to the employee and saying, hey, man, well done. We do a lot of good information share on what we want, potentially, and go to bat. Some sites do well, some sites don't. But we don't go back and say, man, this is what we asked you to do, and you did a fantastic job. This is what you asked us to do in the survey or through otherwise, and this is what we have done. And so we're making sure this is an environment where you love coming to work. I think that loop is one where we have some improvements to make, and I think, frankly, the information arena that we're talking about here can really help us.
Josh, Survey, we touched on so many topics. I think all of them are really good insights and perspectives for all our viewers. If you look at all encompassing everything put together, all of that points towards the organizational culture you're trying to build with the transformation you're going through. What's your perspective on what that culture potentially looks like, and how does this all fit together for that culture?
Many times I remind myself of the definition of culture is values and beliefs that drive your actions. So in my current role, and when I stepped into this role, I discovered through my first 90 days that the culture was one of geez, everybody tells us what to do and we have no choice. Engineering wants these projects that don't come out the way they should be. Planning wants us on this planning cycle that's not optimal for us. Procurement is not giving us the materials we need and the specs we need to be successful. And so one of the things I had to do very quickly was get my overall network and my teams out of this mindset of everything is being done to us and transform it into a culture of I'm empowered to make improvements. Yeah. And so back in August, we used a model that really helped inspire folks. It was kind of controversial a little bit, but nonetheless, it said manufacturing is the center of the universe. And when our folks heard it, they were like, absolutely it is. Everybody touches us, and so we are the center of the universe. And they got very excited. But I also reminded them, I said, the universe also is very consistent and reliable. The sun comes up at a certain time of the day. It's high noon at a certain time of the day. It goes down at a certain time of the day. It's a two-way traffic. You're empowered to go make changes and improvements to your site, At the same time, you have to give the universe consistency in our performance. That's stuck. And I think my teams are now thinking, used to be when I was to go to the plants, I would get a list of things that for me to do with other supply chain functions. Now when I go to my plants, I hear a list of things that they have done already and they're just sharing with me. So that's a culture change that I'm very proud of.
Very, very interesting, Josh.
I wish I had something that was impactful like that. I think we're all advantaged in food, and that I think from a cultural standpoint, because by and large, our broader organization uses the products we have. Right? We are selling stuff that the reality. I think for almost anybody that attends this conference, we're selling stuff that anybody in our organization can use every day, and therefore they're going to feel more passionate about how we're protecting our customers, our consumers. And so the growth isn't something, I'm not working in a Lamborghini factory that while I may really think it's a fantastic car, I don't know when I'm actually going to have one, right? We make spices or flavors or yogurt or, frozen meals like we heard this morning. And that actually, I think, inherently creates a culture of an organization that through the supply chain that's going to have I believe, a slightly higher belief in what we do is important. And so for me, it starts with that. I think that, McCormick's been around 135 years, or we're just celebrating now, right? And there's a number of long-standing beliefs, whether it's purpose-led performance, whether it's 2 for 1, which is that, this premise of, something that's good for the employees and for the company leads us to a greater goal. Those things have been, it was a very, the amount of that, I'll call it indoctrination that I received after coming in the company within 2.5 years and the focus on, especially for our frontline employees, our CEO still attends 5 and 10 year anniversary parties at our sites. I had never had it before. And again, it's something they've had that's endemic for the organization, and it's grown as the company's grown. He can't attend all of them, but I think he's still doing it on a regular basis, and that means something to the employees. And so I do think that that reinforcement of culture is important. To be clear, we have plenty of challenges in the culture as well, and I think it is clear that when those come up, it is by and large us as leaders that are not. We haven't set the right compelling business need. We haven't kind of created the right vision, and inevitably what we find is when there's disconnects, it comes back. For me, it comes back to me. It comes back to my team about have we really helped people see where we're going and that path to get there. And so for me, to the extent that we can do that, we continue to build the culture that we need. But I do think that we're privileged and that we're privileged in our company in terms of the foundation. I think we're privileged in food and that we make something that people are using on a regular basis and that all of our employees, it's a tangible thing that they can play.
Those are such good examples. Sari, Josh, thank you so much. I think everything you shared is going to be extremely beneficial for all our viewers. Transformation of any kind is extremely hard. But in today's world where there's so much focus on making everything AI in supply chain manufacturing, has a very different meaning. There are some real ground realities that need to be addressed that makes this transformation in supply chain manufacturing, I think, harder than most other transformations that enterprises have seen till now. I really appreciate the perspective both of you have shared. I have learned a lot. I love speaking with companies where products are coming out that I use at home all the time. It's food, honestly. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for leading us to the discussion.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to another episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. Thanks for joining us.